35. I'm going to get us started. Hello, everyone. I'm Susan Turk. I'm the co-chair of the Missouri Progressive Action Group, aka MOPAG. Our chair, Steve Reed, couldn't be here today, and so you're going to have to endure me as your host. Did we have a treasurer's report very quickly?
Yes, it's going to be short and simple. Currently, we have $768.91 in our bank account. That is up a little bit from last month.
Okay. I noticed from Act Blue that we had some new memberships. Is that the case?
I'm not familiar with everybody, but I will run their names to you through an email and you can tell me if they're new members. There are two different people. Okay. So I don't know if they're too new. So.
Before we get started with our speaker, Spencer Toder, does anyone have any announcements? Okay. Our main speaker today is Spencer Toder. He has thrown his hat into the ring for the Democratic primary for U.S. Senate. So the primary will be 2022 next year. I believe there are 5 Democrats so far who have announced that they are going to file to run. And so Spencer, if you would unmute yourself, you have the floor. Welcome to MOPAG.
Thank you, I appreciate it. I feel privileged to be here, particularly because the Zoom invite didn't come until about 1.5 minutes ago, so we just made it. I appreciate all of your time today. A little bit about myself. I'm a lifelong Missourian. I've lived in St. Louis my entire life. Grew up here in St. Louis County, went to WashU. I spent 5 years at WashU getting my undergrad degree in entrepreneurship and organizational behavior and my MBA in the last 2 years. When I graduated, literally all of my friends left Missouri for more progressive cities. Out of the 23 gentlemen in my graduating fraternity class, I'm the only one still here. And I firmly believe that we export talented young people from our state at a ridiculously rapid rate, and they're all leaving for open-minded communities that embrace progressive cultures and people from different backgrounds and identities. So one of the reasons I'm running is because we need to find a way to get to a point where those young leaders want to stay here and grow their families here. And I think that begins by focusing on the progressive values that really almost all Missourians want. When we break things down and we just talk about values, most Missourians want, quality education, healthcare, good paying jobs, less violence. But I know from spending countless hours speaking to people across the state that people are feeling othered. People on our side are told that we're the liberal elite and that we are out of touch. People with it who tend to vote for the GOP, we say, you're voting against your own interests. And what they hear and what they tell me they hear is that we don't think they're smart enough to know what's good for them. And when we do that, they dig their heels in and they say, Spencer, I stop listening immediately when someone says something like that because I'm not going to vote for someone who thinks I'm stupid. So when I started thinking about running, I was digging deep into the divisions that have been created in our society and trying to understand why they exist and how we break the mold and move forward in a more unified way. I came across a progressive, I'm sorry, I have like a terrible cold right now, so I'm like holding back a lot of Sudafed and sniffles. I came across a black bass guitarist by the name of Daryl Davis, and what Daryl Davis has made as his life calling is converting KKK members out of the KKK, and he has 200 KKK robes in his closet. And if you ask him how he was able to do that, how he took these people who were so deeply rooted in a cult and brought them out of it, it was by building bridges, getting to know them, being in the community with them, and helping create a sense of community, which is why he found most people had joined the KKK from the start. And so I started thinking about QAnon, and I'm not saying we need to convert QAnon, but I think we all know people who have joined the cult of Trumpism. And one of the things that we do as progressives is we tend to elevate our language and our message in ways that can be off-putting to them. And so what I'm focusing a lot of my time on is making sure we get out into the communities to find the 3 to 6% of voters that we need in order to win the election. This isn't about QAnon. This is about people who were Reagan Republicans and who are looking for fiscally conservative policies that don't realize necessarily that Medicare for all is fiscally conservative, because we currently spend 2.5 times what we should be spending on healthcare. And a great stimulus to our economy would be if businesses didn't have to spend 30% of their overhead on healthcare costs. And so when we talk to people in these communities, we learn that their values are very much in line with us. And so it's not about being moderate at all. In fact, I think it's about being stronger in progressive sense, but in doing so the way Jamie Raskin talks about being the moral center. So, I mean, if you look at other countries, most of the policies that we consider progressive here aren't even progressive there. They're middle of the road. They're expected for citizens, free healthcare, free college tuition. We haven't gotten to the point where we've united under those things, in part because we're so gerrymandered that we can't get the messages across locally. And then Facebook divides us further because the algorithms are made to divide us. And then our media profits off of that division. So one of the things that we're focusing on heavily is getting out into communities, talking to people, whether it be in urban areas, in suburban areas, in rural areas. And we're going to be putting on a series of festivals to celebrate democracy, to bring people together, to celebrate culture and music and arts, and discuss the things that we have that actually bring us together. Because in the end, this isn't about specific policies even. It's about having that 51st vote that we need in order to eliminate the rule of Manchin, and to get the HR 1 passed, and to get the John Lewis Voting Rights Act passed, and a $15 minimum wage, and the Equal Rights Act, and all the other bills that should have been passed. So my background, again, since I graduated school back in 2009, everything that I've been involved in has been incredibly entrepreneurial. I've been running small businesses and working in real estate, and solving complex problems every day. And working with people from all sorts of different backgrounds, whether they be union workers or carpenters or scientists or doctors, whether it be in my home rehab business or in my medical device startup. It doesn't matter kind of what that situation was. It was that I was able to work with people from all backgrounds and build bridges and solve complex problems that weren't the problems of yesterday, but are the problems of the future. So I've done it my entire life, and that's what my goal is to do for Missouri going forward. I'm happy to field any questions, or to go deeper into any platform issues, or anything I can do to communicate further with you, and to understand what you guys want to see and where you are personally, because most of what I've been doing to date has been listening and making sure that everyone's feeling like their voice is heard, because for so long it feels like we've been screaming at TV screens and at Zoom calls and at cell phones, and it's miserable. And it's time to put someone in office who's going to listen, make sure that our voices are heard.
I got a question.
Go for it, Christina.
What communities have you gone into and talked to the people?
So in the last month, so I announced just about a month ago, and in the last month I've marched with UAW and the unions in the city. I've walked and picked up trash in St. Louis and East St. Louis with Black Men Build. I've been out in Franklin County working with United Rural Democrats. Tomorrow I'll be in Columbia and Rolla. So a lot. My family has a farm out in Leslie, Missouri, out near Washington. And when I go out there and I talk to the neighbors out there, and when I work in the community, people say things like, Spencer, there's already a lot of Republicans running. And I said, well, I'm running as a Democrat. And they said, you're a Democrat? What? And it's because they all want the same things. I mean, we all want clean water, and we want the government to not be the focus of our lives, so we can just enjoy our existences. And I think that they're surprised because we always just talk to each other like neighbors and friends, and not using kind of the ideological political rhetoric that we tend to use.
Spencer, you threw your hat into the ring out of the blue. Do you have any background, any connections, any history, any involvement at all in the Missouri Democratic Party and previous elections for any candidates in the party?
I volunteered about 200 hours for Nicole Galloway's campaign. I would say that that was when I really threw my time towards this. I worked on letter writing campaigns across the country for Joe Biden and for many different senatorial campaigns. But have I ever been involved particularly in the party? No. My background has been in strategy and execution of plans. And when I saw an opportunity to take what we've been trying to do as progressives for so long and actually win an election in a time where the Republican Party has never been so fractured, and we need a strategy that can win. And so I sat down and I spent about 4 months reading and writing and talking to experts and just trying to devise a way that we can actually do this. And so no, I didn't have I've never been on school boards or anything like that, but this has been something I've been working on for about a year straight. It wasn't kind of completely out of the blue.
And Ross, you have your hand up? No, okay. Oh, that's me. That's my cursor on your picture. Okay, sorry. Let me ask you again then, have you ever met Michael Butler, the chair of the state Democratic Party, or Elad Grosser, State Rep Peter Meredith, who are working to expand the party in rural areas of the state?
So I've talked with Michael numerous times. I've talked to Peter numerous times. I have not spoken with Elad. I've reached out to him several times. I've had multiple people make introductions, and he has not responded to those introductions. So I have not spoken directly with Elad, no, but I do appreciate the work that he's doing and that Michael's doing. And I think that if Michael is successful in getting the 10 offices stood up throughout the state that he's hoping to stand up, that could have a very positive impact.
Don Logue, do I see your hand up?
Yes.
Please ask your question.
So we have a lot of, we have a very divided metropolitan area in many different ways. And in particular, we have a lot of mayors and municipalities challenged with deep-seated, longstanding and issues of inequity. How do you propose to earn their trust in your policy positions?
So that's something that I've been working on for many months. I've sat down with many of the progressive leaders in the urban communities and throughout the state to discuss the policies that I believe are necessary, policies, like refunding communities. So when I talk to people about public health, I don't speak specifically about defunding police, which is not a progressive ideal. Refunding communities, I believe, is. Policing just happens to be a reactive way to deal with public safety. And so when we talk about these things, they understand that it's not necessarily the same language that we normally use, but it's language that tends to appeal to a much larger population of people. And they're very excited about having someone with that kind of direction and insight into how we appeal to a larger base.
If I can do a follow-up, and the follow-up would be, so how do you convince those voters in the middle in our swing districts that that's a good investment?
So I am very data and research oriented. So in everything that we do, sorry, the screen just moved around. I was trying to follow your face and it just moved on me. There you are. In everything that I do, I show my work. And it turns out that when people disagree with you, if you can show them the reason why you believe something is a particular way, there's still respect and there's still an understanding and they'll still trust you. And honestly, in the conversations that I've had with people across the state, when I talk about things like abortion and really hard driving issues that tend to be wedge issues, and we talk about them, we don't talk about them as pro-life or pro-choice necessarily. We talk about the best ways to decrease the number of abortions being increase access to contraception, increase sex education, and making infant care free and affordable, which are all things that I truly believe are necessary. And those are things that are statistically significant in making those kinds of differences and have proven track records in other countries. And so when I bring in data and when I bring in research, it tends to resonate with people who are more swing voters or who sit on the fringes.
Thank you.
In terms of policy questions, let me ask you another one. One of the people you're running, who's also planning on running, is Scott Sifton, a state representative and a former state rep and state senator from St. Louis County. Sifton is a supporter of school choice, and in several bills that he submitted to the state legislature while he was there, he would have expanded charter schools throughout St. Louis County. What are your thoughts on school choice and privatization? And as a U.S. Senator representing the state of Missouri, what would you support and not support regarding that issue?
Yeah, so school choice is one of the things where even experts tend to disagree. It's pretty incredible. And even people within the Democratic Party, tend not to see eye to eye. And my personal opinion is anytime you're taking money out of public schools, you're making a mistake. If they wanted to fund charter schools with independent funding and they wanted to find different ways to do it that weren't going to bankrupt our schools or provide insecurity to how we were going to grow going forward, that would be one thing, but that's just not how the charter school system works. I'm not a strong supporter of charter schools. I wouldn't have supported bills that were supporting charter schools. I'm a strong supporter.
No, I'm really, I'm very concerned, and I hope that we're able to talk to Sifton and find out what his thinking was, but it was very difficult to reach him because I'm not in his district, and I never understood why he supported school choice, and I saw it as something that would really hurt county school districts. So you're where I would like to see a U.S. Senator be on that issue. Thank you.
I appreciate that. And honestly, one of the things that I really want to focus on in these conversations is so many things like school choice and the way that it's being driven by gerrymandered districts is because our voting suppression and because of the gerrymandering that needs to end, and we need to pass H.R. 1 and the John Lewis Voting Rights Act to do that. And so many of the things that are extremely divisive and divide in which don't make sense for our society wouldn't even be discussions if we were all being fully represented appropriately.
One of the other things on that issue is the main reason we don't have charter schools throughout the state of Missouri is that rural Republican legislators understand that charter schools would decimate their school districts, and they value their school districts, and they do not want charter schools. And so they're perfectly willing to allow the city school districts to be damaged by them. But they have fought annually, and this year was a very fine example of it. They killed the charter school expansion bill again. It's a difficult subject, and personally, I live in the city of St. Louis and seen the damage that it's done to our school district, and I wish that charter school legislation was repealed. But anyway, I mean, on the federal level, it's an entirely different issue in terms of the federal government providing some funding for charter schools. And so I would hope that, well, what I'm hearing you say is that you would not support additional funding for charter schools. And I think that's the correct position to take as a progressive and a Democrat. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's see.
One thing I didn't mention that I think is essential. So in my opinion, the most important specific policy that needs to be passed is voting rights. I truly believe that we're being suppressed and completely out of existence. And with 30% of Missourians not voting, we know those people want clean water and clean air and good schools and good healthcare. We just need to get them to the polls. And so that's part one. And then as far as issues go, climate change is truly the most important issue to me. I didn't mention that in kind of my initial talking points, but if we have an Earth that doesn't exist and humans are extinct, then none of these other policies matter. And so as a progressive, I think about how we need to embrace innovation and how we need to not only stop, but work to reverse climate change. There are technologies out there that can literally rebuild ice caps. Like, we know that this is possible. They can use mist from ships that are solar powered to create, condensation that can repolarize the ice caps. We need to be thinking that that critically about how we can get creative to turn this around, or we're not going to have a world for our great grandchildren.
Do you have a campaign finance committee yet? A place where people can send contributions?
I do. I can put the Act Blue link or the PO box in the chat.
Do that. Please do that. Don?
Yeah, one more question. What do you believe is the root cause for so many people in this country today being subject to all the lies, the big con that has that really is the platform for the Republican Party today?
Boy, there's so many different elements to that. Personally, I think that one of the main reasons that we see that is when things change, when people don't know where to go for answers, they look for easy answers. And one of the things that Donald Trump did was he created bumper sticker language that said, we're going to make America great again. Here are the people that we should blame. Here are the problems. And if you looked at it, you know, the day after he got elected, he stopped talking about the border wall, the people coming up to pass the border wall for months and months and months until it was necessary for him to draw attention to it again. And I think that right now we're in a position where there is so much insecurity. There's economic insecurity because we've never had a greater wealth gap, that there's so many people who are just looking for answers. And I think it's up to us to provide answers for them that are actually productive and proactive and help give them a direction and actually solve those issues. And that means a $15 minimum wage. And we have to get out there and do what we say we're going to do and create that change. Because if you look at it, I mean, Joe Biden has a 61% approval rating right now. I mean, that's a very, very high approval rating in a country where we feel like everyone is completely divided. And so I don't know that we're as divided as it seems. I think that we spend so much time in our silos that we feel like we are. Because I had conversations last week with 6 different Republicans who were supporting my campaign, despite the fact I'm a progressive Democrat, because they're sick of it. Like they don't want Trumpism. They hate what happened on January 6th. They're embarrassed. They don't want their friends to think that they're, you know, bigots or fascists or racists. And I don't know that we're even as divided as we think. I think we talk about things in such polarized language that it feels like we are. And so my goal is to try to bring us together and to unite us under that dream that you know, what it means to be American is really to have freedom and to have, you know, to not have to worry about healthcare and your job and, you know, paying bills. Because I have friends who work 2 and 3 jobs, and how do they go home and read to their kids at night? And that is systemic, because when they can't read to their kids at night, and we know that that's one of the best ways to make sure that your children are successful, we're putting them in a position where they just can't succeed. And so, you know, we've got Facebook algorithms that divide us. We've got Fox News that sits there just pounding these lies into people's heads, and we let that be normalized. We haven't combated it in a strong enough way to stop that rhetoric from spreading, and we get caught up in these distractions. I mean, cancel culture to me is one of the most strange enigmas that has ever existed, in that I don't know a single human that cares or is worried about themselves being canceled, but it seems to be like the most important topic all day long.
Well, Josh Hawley certainly is, our other senator.
Yeah, but if you look at what he's doing, I call them dangerous distractions. While he's doing that and getting us talking about that and focused on that, they're taking away our voting rights. And that's where we should be focusing our attention, is, you know, making sure that people have a voice, and that we aren't losing, you know, what it means to really be an American, and that means having a representative democracy.
Ross, do you have your hand up?
Yes, I do. I have a question. Spencer, you mentioned that climate change was your primary issue. That's true for me also. And one thing that many people concerned about climate change don't mention is the issue of growth per se. When we had the slogan on recycling, the first word in the slogan was reduce, as well as reuse and recycle. And that means reducing our consumption. anytime that we switch to renewables, we're engaged in a process that has to use a large number of fossil fuels that often engages in damaging environmental practices, such as dredging the ocean to get rare earths or digging up the earth for those same materials. So where do you stand as far as the issue of growth in relation to climate change? Thank you.
So that's a great question. And so much of it is an investment. So I'm a firm believer in carbon capture technology. And if we're capturing carbon and if we're finding ways to minimize some of the damages on the front side, and we're making sure that we're investing in these long-term batteries that have the ability to hold some of this energy long-term, people have a lot of trouble discussing nuclear and what that looks like and what clean nuclear looks like. But thorium actually has very strong properties. I'm not sure if you've looked into thorium at all, but it's a very inert. It doesn't have nearly the same risks as some of the other nuclear options, and it's being used in Japan. It's being used on aircraft carriers. So there are possibilities to do things like that. Reduce tends to be one of the hardest things for Americans to get behind because we are a consumer culture. But if we don't start investing now in the technology of the future, we're in real trouble. And I think one of the things that I tend to say that was an aha moment for me is when two of the richest men in America are trying to get to a different planet because they think our world is on fire. That should tell you something. Like that is a concern. We need to be investing in this planet and finding ways to make this planet habitable. And it is a national security risk. And every single day we wait, it's more expensive to deal with than the day before. Between the farming issues that are going to make agriculture impossible going forward due to drought and extreme flooding, with areas throughout the equator that are going to be uninhabitable, that people are going to have to migrate. I mean, our national security apparatus all agree that it is one of the top threats to our national security, and we don't address it that way. We don't address it as a national security issue, and we should.
Let me ask you, since you mentioned voting rights, both HR 1 and the John Lewis Voting Rights Act are not going anywhere in the Senate because it takes 60 votes to bring legislation to the floor. Do you have, what are your thoughts on the filibuster and those Senate rules?
We have to end the filibuster. It's not constitutionally mandated. It isn't part of what we believe in. It's stopping all progress from taking place. There's no good reason at this point to allow all progress to be halted by minority rule effectively. If you look at the senators who blocked the January 6th bipartisan commission investigation, they represented 83 million less Americans. And they were able to do it with 34 votes. I mean, that is mind-boggling and not democratic at all. And so if we're going to have a functional democracy, we need to be able to adapt and adjust and make changes so that we can create progress.
I don't see any other hands up. And okay, Christina, unmute yourself. Please unmute yourself.
Sorry about that. Senator Blunt have been reelected, on his stand on the military spending. We have a lot of people in St. Louis, with their livelihoods and pensions, relating to this military spending. How are you addressing that issue? I mean, we do have to watch our military spending, but then we do have a lot of jobs that depend on this.
Yeah, so there are a couple different ways to look at it. One, I would absolutely love a full audit of where the Pentagon is spending its money. It is mind-blowing, the money pit that has become, and the amount of money that goes into the military-industrial complex that is just unaccounted for. As far as St. Louis goes, and the way that we depend on, our local economy depends on companies like Boeing and other, military based companies, we need to incentivize them to diversify. And I'm actually friends with the guy who used to run Boeing Ventures. So in one of my previous careers, I did all of the leasing for the Cortex district in St. Louis. I put all of the companies in the 4240 building. I put 14 companies in CIC, the Cambridge Innovation Center. And I've been heavily involved in the innovation community of St. Louis. And I know the kinds of things that they're investing in. And they're not just investing in military-based spending. They're investing in flying taxis effectively, where they're partnering with companies like Uber. They're investing in different types of fuels that are more, that are more climate friendly. And I think if we start, it's economics, right? So if we incentivize the right types of behaviors, we can still stimulate economic growth for these types of companies without saying that it has to go towards things that carry bombs and things that, kill people. And I think furthermore, if we've learned anything from history, it's that, especially in the last few years, is that most of these wars and battles aren't going to be fought with bombs and missiles. They're going to be fought with technology. And if you can shut down an energy grid from, 10,000 miles away, or you can use drones, or you can, get uranium spinning centrifuges to spin out of control and stop someone's nuclear warhead plan, from the NGA, 10 miles from my house. You don't necessarily need to be spending billions of dollars on airplanes that the military says they don't even need right now. And so I think there is a balance in terms of stimulating our economy, but I think we invest in entrepreneurship, we invest in local companies that are going to grow, and we find ways that if these people do end up losing their jobs, we promote their ability to take their genius and make our society better. One of the things that people don't recognize, we wouldn't have an innovation community in St. Louis if Pfizer hadn't had layoffs, and if Monsanto hadn't had layoffs. Almost all of the initial Cortex-based companies that grew out of those that grew initially were pharma and ag tech companies that when Monsanto and Pfizer had layoffs, the people got such good severance, and they found local money to invest in them, and they started companies that are now becoming the next companies that are going to be the biggest companies in St. Louis. And particularly in a time where people can work from absolutely anywhere in the country or anywhere in the world because COVID has made us all digital, we need to make Missouri an incredibly progressive state where people want to live. And we already have phenomenal quality of life for some people. We just have to make it a phenomenal quality of life for everyone.
Ross, is that your hand up again?
Yes, it is. I have a question about cyber. Recently, there has been a lot of news about a variety of types of cyber attacks, many of which seem to be emanating either from Russia, China, or Iran. Those three countries, it is known, all have the capacity to take down our electric grid, perhaps on a large scale and perhaps for a lengthy period of time. How do you think, and we have the same capacities, in fact, they may have been reacting to our aggression in that area in the first place. What would be your policy toward cyber, I'll say it broadly, cyber activities?
So I would say two things. One, we should probably be considering some sort of a cyber truce with some of these countries, because this is like a nuclear war, this is a Cuban Missile Crisis type event. Anyone can be launching these attacks at any time, and the devastation can be astounding. At the same time, I think we have to be incredibly defensive and doing that in an offensive way. And what I mean by that is we need to be investing in microgrids and battery technology. There's no reason why we shouldn't be trying to put solar panels and wind farms throughout our country and make it so we have a grid where everyone holds on to their own energy and it can be transported back and forth through payment with microtransactions. This is a complete aside, and it seems like this is an area that you have a lot of interest, but I actually put a small amount of money in a company called Power Ledger about 5 years ago that's out of Australia. If you want to look it up, all they do are these microgrids, and they found a way to make it so Australia never goes offline anymore, even though it used to have rolling blackouts regularly. And it's because if I live in Arizona and you live in St. Louis, I can transfer my energy to you using blockchain technology in terms of micro payment processing. And when it's dark there, it's light here, it's light there, it's dark there. It's pretty incredible stuff. And other countries are doing this. India is working on this right now. Australia is very heavily involved in this. Japan is working on it. They have partnerships in all of these countries. Nowhere in America are we working on this right now. And we need to be thinking forward about technology. And it really, really scares me when we have Congress people on television who say, you know, Mr. Zuckerberg, how are you making money? And he says, well, advertising, sir. Like, if we have people who don't understand technology in office, we are at a severe disadvantage to these countries who are making technology their entire platform for growth and how they plan to attack us in the future. So one of the things I pride myself on is my engagement with the technology community and in the innovation world.
I don't see any other hands up. Anyone else have any questions?
So I would add, my goal is to run the most accessible and transparent campaign of all times, like literally in the history of running for office. And so if you go to my website, there's a floating head. It's just my head and it looks like it's talking. And if you click on it, it'll start a conversation with me, and you can record a video, audio, or write a letter. And every day I respond to these, and I do it in a video form, and it starts an engaging conversation, because I think that accessibility to politicians and to people who are running for office is essential. We should know where they're getting their information, why they're making the decisions they're making. They should be accountable to us. And I want to lead by example in that. So if at any time you want to get a hold of me, you know, you can email me at spencer@spencertoder.com, or you can play around with the widget and start the conversation there. But I can tell you, I mean, some of the things we have planned for the near future that I would love to get on, and I'll email them to your organization, but we're putting on 10 festivals statewide to try to engage people in democracy and show them that democracy can be fun, and that it's about engaging community and culture and art. And it's a celebration. And we're starting a YouTube series where I will be sitting down with experts in 18 different policy issue-based discussions, and we'll be discussing what the proper policy is from a progressive platform that actually makes a difference. Because we shouldn't just assume that politicians know everything and that, you know, the bumper sticker language they scream out is what's true. They should be listening to experts. They should be showing their work, and they should be making it clear what they stand for and why. And then if we disagree with them, they should have to explain why they voted differently from what we wanted. And I believe that. And I got so sick of, you know, hearing all of these things when Josh Hawley says, all of my constituents are upset about big tech. It's like, I've been out in rural Missouri almost every weekend for the last 10 years. We don't have internet out there. I don't think big tech is the big fear. You know, who are you actually talking to about these things? And so I want to make sure that this is accessible and accountable and transparent.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions for Spencer? Seeing none. Okay. We're going to move on with our next item on our agenda. Spencer, you are welcome to stay with the meeting. If you have other things to do today, that's understandable. We hope that you'll keep in touch with us. We're certainly going to be keeping our eye on you. And I know in about a year, things will heat up, and there will probably be candidate forums for all of the Democrats before the primary. So we're looking forward to seeing what happens with your campaign, and thank you for speaking to us today.
Thank you for your time. I actually have to drive up or over to Columbia right now. I've got a presentation tonight and 2 tomorrow. So I am going to head out, but I appreciate your time. And please, all of you, my goal is to make sure your voices are heard. So reach out at any time with any questions, any ideas. We have 16 people working on this campaign right now. 14 are volunteers. We're working our butts off to try to make sure that we can win this thing and get that 51st vote so we can all have the things that we want. So thank you so much for your time today.
You're welcome. Take care and good luck to you.
Thank you.
All right. Basically, the only other item on our agenda was a legislative update from Glenn Keenan, who is not here today. However, he did send a written report, and if you would well, if you wouldn't mind, I'm going to read it to you. It's not very long. So let me just switch my screen over here. And the title of Glenn's report is Bad, but It Could Have Been Worse. So I would recommend a glass of scotch or some other hard liquor to drink while you're listening to this. It is, our legislature is what it is. Glenn says the Missouri legislature leaves Jefferson City with critical tasks undone, but much mischief accomplished. The legislative session ended with a whimper. Unhappy senators left the Capitol hours prior to the official end time because, well, the Republican supermajority was fighting among themselves, with some claiming Senate leadership lied about legislative deals and proposals. Over in the House, frustration set in because so many last day issues couldn't be completed with the senators already gone. They actually adjourned at 2 p.m. instead of 6 p.m. for those of you who didn't know. Still, from early January till mid-May, both chambers managed to do a lot of bad stuff, such as the Second Amendment Preservation Act, which will make it illegal for Missouri law enforcement to cooperate with federal law enforcement on gun laws and fine departments which do work with the feds $50,000 each time they do it. State Rep Peter Meredith actually brought up on the floor during debate that this amounted to defunding the police. Didn't stop the Republicans from doing it. The fiscal year 2022 budget. Despite strong revenue numbers, all levels of education remain on a starvation diet. Missouri state employees probably get a 2% raise pending the governor's signature, but will remain the lowest paid in the nation. Funding for the Department of Social Services projects 200 fewer workers despite Medicaid expansion and high utilization of traditional Medicaid and food stamps. And money for Medicaid expansion was stripped from the governor's proposal, making implementation of the voter-approved constitutional amendment a court action. And 2 lawsuits have been filed in order to force the state to do that. Home school vouchers. Donation tax credits will be used to subsidize private school tuition or to pay the state education contribution to homeschool parents. An upper middle class family with 4 kids could get $25,000 a year to subsidize their homeschooling. This is the camel's nose in the tent, providing a mechanism for future transfers of public school funding to private schools, parochial schools, or to homeschooling families. Prohibiting some common birth control via Medicaid. IUDs and some prescription methods of birth control will not be paid for with Medicaid, resulting in Missouri being out of compliance with federal rules and putting billions in federal funding at risk. A few good things did happen. Missouri will increase fuel taxes by 2.5% cents per year for 5 years, leading to a 12.5-cent total increase, giving MoDOT revenue for necessary maintenance and a few road improvements. The state's fuel tax will remain below the national average, and in a complication only possible in Jefferson City, Missouri residents who save their gas receipts can get the new tax back, which is estimated at about $40 a year per family. Missouri will finally have a statewide prescription drug monitoring program. We will be the last state to implement a PDMP in the country. Though about 80% of the population has been covered by the St. Louis County PDMP, operated as a quasi-cooperative. Of course, being this is Missouri, the database will be more restricted than most of other states and make it less useful to law enforcement. And a series of small law changes, such as requiring schools to have lactation rooms available to staff and students, and technical improvements in child welfare codes did pass. Now, a great number of bad ideas failed to cross the finish line. To cite a few, thanks to the Democratic opposition, the number of unemployment eligibility weeks did not get cut down to 8 weeks, though that could happen next year. Paycheck deception didn't pass, and right to work did not pass. Talk of appealing the voter-approved series of minimum wage increases did not gain traction, nor did new restrictions on absentee voting or voter ID advance yet. Many of these bad things are under consideration as proposed extraordinary special session topics. So, given what did not pass this year, Republicans have asked for the following special session topics to be considered by the governor. Federal reimbursement allowance Medicaid tax extension. This affects all the hospitals in the state, and it will cost them millions of dollars if it's not passed. Congressional redistricting. Ban on critical race theory use in school curriculum. Control of the Kansas City Police Department budget. Urban crime. Election security, including voter ID. Eminent domain use in agricultural areas. Ban on funding Planned Parenthood. Federal COVID stimulus funding spending, and reinstatement of the farmers' commodity tax credit. The FRA, the Federal Reimbursement Allowance for Medicaid, is pretty close to being an Amway-style multi-level marketing scam. Still, it has a substantial net positive yield for the hospitals, pharmacies, and others who pay the tax by drawing down more federal dollars. Not passing it in a special session could cost Missouri in billions of revenue for traditional Medicaid to the, and therefore hurt our hospitals. Census data necessary to draw congressional districts won't be available till mid-fall. With Clean Missouri's repeal, the process will be challenging. This decade, Missouri won't lose a seat in Congress, but after the 2030 census, we probably will. One would hope that the Republicans want to draw a reasonable, logical map. Democratic Party State Chair Michael Butler, however, plans to release a clean style map prior to the special session to inspire the Republicans to do the right thing. Don't hold your breath. Remember how Republicans always tout local control, then crush it whenever they can? For example, local health department oversight or monster hog farms got crushed this year, as did leaving pandemic control to the health experts. And now many in the legislature want to take curriculum control away from school boards, administrators, and teachers. Specifically, many want to ban critical race theory use in teaching the history of African Americans. The GOP prefers a sanitized reality where Africans took the love boat to America. My best guess is that 3 topics will get a special session: the FRA, redistricting, and election security, voter ID, and voter suppression. Glenn Keenan. Okay, thank you for sitting through that report. And I don't know what else to say, but that's basically our agenda for today. Do any of you have anything you would like to bring up? I don't see any hands raising. Okay, are there any announcements? Any upcoming events anyone would like us to know about? Okay, I think this is going to go on record as the shortest MOPAG meeting ever. And given that it's nice outside, I guess we'll all be able to spend the rest of the afternoon enjoying it. Let me announce that our next MOPAG meeting is scheduled for Saturday, July 10th, which is the second Saturday because the first Saturday will fall on the July 4th weekend. So with that in mind, I hope you all have an enjoyable day and an enjoyable rest of the month of June, and we'll see you on July 10th. Take care.